Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series analysis. I am now officially on Volume 9, Chapter 10. I finished Chapter 10. So, with that, the not allowed a spoiler about Sylphiette and Fitz is now been lifted. It has been lifted from the chat. You are now free to talk about Sylphiette. It's done. I'm over it. I was sick of it the moment it finally happened. It was pretty much the moment that Ariel told her to take off the glasses, and it was like, thank you. Thank you, it's done. I'm done with it. Move on. But yes, everything else that happened in Chapter 10, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to in this video. We'll see. It's kind of one of those things where it's quite a bit. Those 9 and 10 is really long. Granted, 7 and 8 is really long as well. But we'll see how far I get. As usual, it's in the title, so you know already. Spoilers for me, pre-recording. But yes, the other problem with kind of doing 9 and 10 separate is that technically we have the extra chapters, and I don't think they're going to be too long. Like, Sylphie's chapter is going to be pretty short because it's a lot of just her perspective. It's literally the Edda's chapter for Sylphie. But again, we'll see. As per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel. Our last Mushoku Mondays was really great. We broke numbers than what we normally get, and that's fantastic. I love seeing that progressing growth, but love you guys' support. Thanks for sharing it out. Thanks for being a part of it, hitting the like button. If you have not already, hit the like button. It supports the channel, even if you can't support other ways. For those that do support the channel through Patreon, our tips link, our super thanks, becoming a member of the channel, you guys mean so much to me. Thank you guys so much for making this happen. Your guys' support keeps us going, because if I didn't have that support, I can't do it. I literally can't do it. But yeah. But before we start the video proper, I do want to go over some post-last Mushoku Monday talk and some things that kind of jumped in my mind as I was editing that I'd love to go over. I think the really great thing is as I was editing the recording, the thing that popped in my head immediately is I realized, I wonder why the man god wanted him to go to the university. I don't think the man god cares about his manhood. Honestly, I think it's a way of making Rudius want to do it. That's for sure. I mean, at the end of his conversation with Rudius, he says that, and Rudius is like, okay, I'm doing it. Like, he knew that that was going to inspire Rudius to go to the university. What benefit does the man god have with Rudius getting his manhood back? There was two things that kind of come to my mind, especially after reading the 10th chapter, is I assume that there's a good possibility that man god wants Rudius to get involved with Ariel. For what reason, that's probably something that's going to come up way later. But the other thing that jumped to my mind is, who did Rudius befriend in the university? Nanahoshi. Who is Nanahoshi? Pretty darn close to Orsted. So, there's a thing to be said that the man god, using Rudius as a pawn, would want him to befriend the pawn of Orsted in order to manipulate or get closer to Orsted. So, again, this is one of those really early theories, and I have no context whatsoever to go based on, but again, Nanahoshi should be an extension of Orsted as an enemy to the man god. She doesn't give that indication. She doesn't care about Orsted. She doesn't care about the man god. She doesn't care about their feud. She just wants to get home. But you can say that through Orsted's travels with the Nanahoshi, he might have gained some trust to her, and using her could be beneficial to man god. Again, really early stuff, but we'll see where it goes from there. Additionally, through conversation with the chat, it really does hit home the context of Nanahoshi and her experiences in this world. I know that we went through a lot of different contexts around why she views this world differently, but I do believe there's a lot of credit to be given to the circumstances between Nanahoshi and Rudius in their life here. Why does Rudius connect so much to the people of this world? Well, he was born in this world. He was forced in infancy to have to rely on a family, which he normally, like, if he just popped up in the world as a 10-year-old and he has Paul and Zenith, he would never care about them. Like, okay, yeah, whatever. I want to get out of here. I want to get on my own. I don't know who these people are. They're not my family. But he was forced to be nurtured and protected and cared for by this family. And thus he creates a connection with them. Now, it takes forever before Rudius really kind of truly connects with, like, Paul. Like, with the extra chapter, you do get a sense that Rudius does care for Zenith. He turns his eyes away from her as she's breastfeeding. But Paul, he thought Paul was the worst. It didn't take until we had the chapter, I think it was volume 5, I believe it was, the whole situation with Paul and his reuniting with him before he finally connects to Paul. But still, this is his family. And again, Nanahoshi doesn't have that. She's dropped into this world, her previous body, she's a teenager, she has nothing, no family or anything. She is isolated. And so there's no chance for her to ever connect to anybody. And I sort of went into that when I was talking about the fact that she dreads the idea of ever getting old in this world. Because again, who's going to take care of her? In a setting like this, the only people that would take care of you is your family. She doesn't have family. So she would be kicked to the curb. She'd probably be dying on the side of the street somewhere. Also, I do agree with a lot of people in a sense of Nanahoshi herself coming here when she was young. She didn't get to live a fulfilled life in the previous world. She was young. She had plenty of time ahead of her. She mentioned at some point to Rudius, you must have lived a fulfilling long life. Which we know from our perspective, no, he was in the 30s. He didn't get to live a full life. He just had a terrible life. But from her perspective, she didn't get that chance in the previous world. Rudius did. And yes, even from Rudius' perspective, he failed at. He had a terrible life, and he blames himself for the most part. Now, from Hoshi's side, again, she didn't get that chance. So she didn't have that fulfilling life, and thus she got it taken from her. Now, the big question mark's going to be is it going to be worth it going back to Nahoshi at this point? When you go back, are you going to be a 30-year-old? Are you going to be in your late 20s, so to speak? What purpose? You're not going to have your family. Your family, a lot of them might be dead. Who knows? Are you going to go back at the same time you left? Or is it going to be 10 or so years later? That's a big question mark that she's obviously going to have to face. 5 years, sorry. Anyways, that's some afterthoughts of the last Mushoku Mondays. Let's get further into Volume 9 with Side Story Sylphiette Part 4. And yes, a lot of this stuff I'm going to be going over, and I'm probably going to kind of dart through some of this stuff because I already know the answer. This is kind of one of the negative sides of going to Chapter 10 is like, I already know this side story. I know what's happening now at this point. So, but there is some question that I still have even at the end of Chapter 10. So we'll get into that. But yes, Sylphiette Side Story Part 4. Sylphie was anxious about the situation. Silent turned out to be a girl. Not a surprise, as the princess sources suggested this. A lot of her innovations were pretty much intended for women, but she was worried because Rudius seemed devoted to Silent. All the other girls were beautiful that were around Rudius, but Rudius didn't seem interested in them. Silent was different. She was special to Rudius. She had a complicated problem, and Rudius wanted to help her with it. Though Rudy always liked helping people, this wasn't new. But again, Sylphie notes that there was a special connection between the two of them. One that Sylphie couldn't understand. She assumed that it's probably not romantic, but he did seem more intimate with her than anyone else. She even wondered, are they more connected and more close than even I was with Rudius back in Buena Village? Now again, this is the thing that I was hinting at with the previous chapters, this idea that from the outside looking in, they're close to each other and they're talking about something really, really important. From an outsider's perspective, especially with that language barrier, all she sees is that Rudius has a connection with her. He makes a joke and Silent laughs about it. Of course, again, she doesn't understand what they're saying, but he says something and then she giggles and they hold hands. She sees that there's some sort of bond. And what Sylphie doesn't see is that the bond they have is through a mutual understanding of a previous world, a previous life, a previous environment. Everything is different in the previous world. And that's one thing they do share. They share comedy, they share humor, they share an experience. They both been through the same thing. And that's something that you can sort of form a bond through, is that mutual understanding of something. And again, Sylphie doesn't see that. She doesn't understand why they were so connected. And yes, technically, through this whole thing, it does start hitting heavy on the idea that Fitz is Sylphie, because Sylphie's like explaining everything that happened in that room, not just from a secondhand experience. She's not explaining that Fitz has told me that they were looking pretty chummy together. No, she knows. She's seen it. And yes, since they've been spending so much time together, he's spending less time with Fitz, studying about the displacement incident. And she feels spending that time together, they're going to gain a romantic feeling together. She wasn't concerned with Lenny and Priscilla, but the thought of Silent taking him away made her heart throb painfully. And this, I feel, is the big trigger point. She's been watching him, walking in with an Elise and spending time with Lenny and Priscilla, all this stuff, but that didn't hit as hard as Silent, because again, she's seeing there's a different bond between the two of them, and the way they act is different. This isn't just simply they're walking along his side or he makes some sort of joking pass at them. This is different. Now, Sylphie didn't hate Silent, but she didn't want her to take Rudius away. She sat next to him, where Sylphie should be sitting. I like that comment. Casually talking like they've been friends forever. Again, they have a mutual bond. If she wanted to claim that seat, she had to do it right and spend lots of time with him and make memories with him. Like how she's saying, you're not doing it right. I know how to do it properly. Girl, you've been standing on the sideline ever since you were a little girl. You know nothing about romance at this point. Plus, your only influence for the last 8 or so years has been Ariel, who is like the last person I would talk to about romance. Though she did get a resolve for the whole situation. It was lewd-like. The princess did say that Sylphie could take her time. But she also said if there was no chance of it, she wanted Sylphie to stop using Fitz. Stop having Fitz interact with Rudy. Again, she's messing around and it's going to cause issues for them. Now, again, I do believe Ariel is coming from a vantage point of a friend. She wants the best for Sylphie. We've already established that. But I do believe that she does see that she's standing aside. And this could be another comment to push her. Get it over with. Like, I'm going to take this from you if you don't do it. That kind of thing. Like, it's a tease to push her to do something. But I do see there being a negative effect to having Fitz interact with Rudius, because it's going to cause the perception of Rudius to go down. Sylphie has said it, but it's always kind of a way of covering up things. But it's technically true. They have a perspective to the public that Fitz is cold-hearted killer. Try to assassinate Ariel. You're going to go down because Silent Fitz is cold-blooded. He'll destroy you. But Sylphie believes at this point, even if Fitz left Rudius' life, he'd be fine. I don't agree with that because he has a lot of admiration for Fitz. But yes, she believes that Rudius would move forward as always. Then Silent would take the seat and they'd spend their life together. And Sylphie didn't want that. But what was she supposed to do? She had to come out and tell him who she was and how she felt, one way or another. But even still, she couldn't get her legs to move. What if he said no? When did I become such a coward? She thought that she had grown braver. And that's the end of tonight's chapter. Again, I got sick of these chapters at some point. I'm glad that I'm finally to 10 and it's over with, but I do still think there's some good stuff in here, and we've gone over that. Let's move on to Chapter 7, A Day at the University of Magic. A year had passed since Rudius has enrolled in the university, at which he had just turned 16. After meeting Nanahoshi, his routine has changed. He'd wake up and do his training. Sometimes Bodyguardi would join him, nodding his head. Rudius didn't even know how to interact with the guy. But he was a nice guy. It's just that he never knew what he was thinking and what would set him off. But one morning, Bodyguardi spoke to him. Here's where we get into the juicy stuff about the battle auras. He had no clue why Rudius was training without cloaking himself in a battle aura. Again, this is kind of one of those things where it almost seems second nature to a lot of adventurers and fighters. Rudius heard of it, but he had no idea how to cloak himself. So he asked, what exactly is a battle aura anyways? It's mana. Nothing more, nothing less. He explained it as a technique that used mana to improve your body's physical abilities. Now, this was the interesting thing. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's sort of hitting on it again. This is not just like this thing that cloaks you and protects you from damage. It enhances you, like in multiple ways, strengthening you to unnatural extremes. How do you actually do it though? It's simple. Spread a field of mana over every part of your body. Then press it tightly against you. So it's kind of like you're spreading it and then you tighten it. It's like a plug suit. Useful advice. Maybe the university could I don't know if he was joking about this because you don't get like a sense of like sarcasm. He's like, useful advice. Maybe the university could replace the professors with demon kings. I think it's sarcasm because it's like super short and simple. Oh, naturally, that's what I do. But still, Rudius thought that maybe he could gain a few power levels if he mastered it. Yes, this was, again, from my opinion, and the fact that he has so much mana, it seems like this would be something that would just absolutely make him OP. But we're not gonna get that right now, apparently. He sort of mimicked Super Saiyans and Nin users, but no matter how much he manipulated his mana, he sensed no change. He thought he got stronger, but maybe that was the placebo effect. Well, that's odd. You've got no talent for this, boy. Normally, battle aura would be something that people would begin to automatically generate after spending some time doing physical training. He put in a good effort, but he didn't have any knack for it. Some just never generated battle aura no matter how intense their regimen. Again, sucks. I see this as being something that'd be insanely good for Rudius. But, as somebody joked about before, the gacha didn't work for him. The gacha gods did not work for him. The RNG did not work. But again, hopefully later on, I don't know. Maybe it's something that he just needs to keep. And that's the kind of annoying thing, is it doesn't indicate that he's like, well, I'll just keep trying. If this is something that's generated over a lot of time of spending time with it, maybe you just need to keep doing it. Why are we giving up immediately? This doesn't seem right. I mean, he how much time did he spend back in Buena Village just casting spells over and over again in a bucket? Just keep doing it. You need to build it. Wahahaha. Not like you have any need for it, of course. Laplace never cloaked himself in a battle aura either. But he was truly powerful. Again, it sort of indicates this idea that either Laplace blasted people before he even got to him, or possibly he just built up other defenses, barriers, whatnot. So maybe Rudius can find an alternative option. Go into those rings, the magical implements, which again, later on, he gets into him. It's like, why didn't you get one? He keeps like dabbling into things and he gives up. It makes sense why he gave up with that. But anyways, Bodyguardi often used the demon god Laplace as a comparison. Did you actually meet Laplace, Sir Body?
Indeed, I did. He annihilated most of my body with a single blow. It took some time to reform after that. I thought he'd actually killed me for a moment. Blah!
He faced a powerful foe and lived. It was something worthy to brag about, which again, I immediately think about Rudius and the fact that he could technically brag the fact that he fought against the dragon god, but he sort of does that every now and then, not bragging, but he brings it up. According to Bodyguardi, Laplace was an extremely shady character, but master of using mana. Could I get stronger if I learned to fight like Laplace did?
I don't recommend trying. If you try to use your mana in the way that he did, you'd blow your own body apart in an instant. It's bizarre for a human to have that much mana inside of them in the first place, you know?
Kind of indicates this idea that is he infusing the mana itself into his body? Not a battle aura on the outside, but inside to kind of push outward to any magic or anything like that. Again, we've already kind of started to indicate this idea that, you know, with teleportation, it has this problem with going through objects, but then there's the indication that possibly a large amount might be able to overcome that. But then again, Rudius came up afterwards and said, but healing, I touch their skin and it goes inside their body. So mana does go into objects. And so maybe this idea of flowing it through the body maybe repel from the inside out. Or in other cases with maybe physical blows or something like that. But again, it's sort of indicating here that doing that with that much mana, you just burst yourself. That's kind of what I'm getting indication here. Yes, Rudius in his mind confirms channeling too much mana could apparently destroy a magician from the inside out. Laplace, on the other hand, had a sturdy body and a technical skill to use it fully.
But why do you even want to get stronger, boy?
Well, I mean, yes, in his mind he's thinking, I just got nearly killed what the horse did.
I've known many men who sought fame and strength to an excessive degree, and it never ended well for them. Take my nephew, for example. Too proud by half, that one. He settled down a bit after very nearly dying. But up until then, he was obsessed with becoming the strongest man in the world. There are more important things in life than that, you know?
Like what?
Like women. Once you've had one of your own, you'll understand. Wahahaha.
Rudius, you need a Kishirika in your life, obviously. That's what Bodyguardi is saying. You need a Kishirika in your life. An uplifting, fun character, not a violent tsundere or a too reserved girl. You need Roxy. Yes, Rudius realized usually villains wanted power. He wanted the confidence, though. But with his condition, being a womanizer wouldn't make him happy at the moment. Even if he found a Kishirika, he'd just be depressed the whole time. That reminds me, Your Majesty.
Yes? What is it?
You wouldn't happen to know a cure for impotence, would you?
No.
I don't know. It's like, I kind of want some context around that no. Is it like a, what? No? Or a, oh, damn, no. I don't know. After training, he ate and started intermediate detoxification magic. While beginner covered most of the ailments of the world, rarer illnesses and venoms used by high-ranking monsters used a lot of mana. Intermediate detoxification classes were mostly about learning those ultra-targeted spells. We're going to more kind of refined to these specific things. And sadly, incantations for them were painfully long. Even at intermediate, you had to chant phrases several times longer than any offensive spell. Modern incantations were abbreviated to shorter versions than the older ones, which I was mentioning in the previous Mushoku Mondays. They've kind of condensed it a little bit. But the more advanced the tier, of certain disciplines, it felt like they'd never been shortened. For intermediate detoxification, you had to memorize more than 50 different incantations. Some created poisons. At advanced, you have to learn more than 100 spells. At Saint tier, there was supposedly less to memorize, but the amount of mana ramped up. At King tier, you were looking at things that were pretty much researched and devised by one nation or another, and most were guarded secrets. We're talking about it here in a minute. I'll wait. Some created poisons incurable by ordinary magic, which were a threat towards other countries. Some made cures for those poisons. This was literally this world's arms race. It's sort of getting into the realm of biological warfare. These other countries are creating curses and poisons to inflict upon another nation to take them down, while at the same time that other nation might be spying to find out that stuff or just figuring out ways of curing it so they can offset it. Which is kind of funny in the wake of what we just talked about in the previous Mushoku Mondays. What were we talking about? There's no innovation in magic, and especially summoning. Nobody's doing anything to learn anything new, create new circles or anything. But here, they're having a day old time creating different curses and poisons because that apparently is a better way of taking down another nation. If you think about it, going out into a field and dropping a big meteorite that you just created, there's only so much that you can damage with it. But if you can create a poison or spell or something that you can enchant on somebody or into a drink, that can take down a nation. That is much more easier to take down another nation. In another world with my biological warfare. The only divine tier detoxification spell that Rudius has ever heard of was one to cure petrification syndrome, an illness that transformed the mana inside of you into magic stone. Only one person was ever able to use the spell. It was guarded carefully in the great cathedral of Milshan. Interesting. Let's put a pin in that one. As incantations grew longer, apparently king tier spells may require you to recite the contents of an entire book out loud. Wow. Yeah. It made Rudius plan on carrying a book around with incantations in them. He was, of course, doing this class for his condition, but the professors told him that there wasn't anything to make him more perky. At lunch, it got colder outside, so he decided to create like a building around where they were sitting outside, little hole in the roof for the fire to come through, but unfortunately, Genius showed up and chewed him out. So he decided that they'd start eating in the first floor of the dining hall. Zonova was upset at first, of course, but he knew that Julie would never be able to join them on the third floor. Of course, there was gossip around Rudius, him taking over the special class, taking out the Demon King one blow. He tried not to let the praise get him too overconfident. Orsted taught him a painful lesson. Bah! I see. It's finally gotten too cold for you outside, boy. It seemed the room was hinting at him to sit down with Bodygotti. It's like everybody's glancing and saying, go sit with him, dude. Yeah, Bodygotti's over there just chugging down drinks. Apparently, he figured out how to get it in there. Normally, they don't serve it there, of course, but I guess they're not going to stop him from drinking. Julie asked about the drinks, and Bodygotti responded, bah! You're dwarf, all right. Indeed, this is beer of the highest quality. It was a secret stash of a man with a hairball on his head. Talking about the principal. So the principal had it. Yes, dwarves like to drink, but Rudius wondered, is it all right for her to do that? Is she ready for that? She's very young. But again, he started wondering, maybe this is normal in this world. Am I taking my beliefs of a previous world and trying to instill upon her? Sir Body, would you mind if she had a little bit? Not at all. There's no joy in drinking alone, you know? Have as much as you please. Whoa. She sipped it steadily, and Rudius wanted to object, but again, he even acknowledged in this world he drank pretty early. Zenobia spoke up. Perhaps I'll have a mug as well. You've got class today, it's probably not a good idea. If you say so, master. My apologies, Sir Batty. Wah, you can't even drink as you please. The life of a student must be an unhappy one. You're a student too? Is he a student too? Or was he supposed to be a... No, I think he's got a student's uniform, so I don't know. After lunch, Rudius headed to advanced healing classes. Priscilla was surprisingly taking classes and paying close attention. She didn't normally take things seriously. Sadly, most of the other students kind of avoided her because of her reputation as a delinquent, and she had a lot of issues with pairing with other people for their practical skills tests. She was grateful to have Rudius here, and even gave him her most prized possession. Yes, a piece of half-eaten jerky. He quickly licked the dog girl stuff from it, which made her sick. For Linnea, it looks like she was questioning Rudius a lot about elemental spells. She was having a lot of problems with combining magic. And yes, as we mentioned with Sylphie before, and Rudius is kind of figuring out here, a lot of people found this whole thing a stumbling block in the school. Again, they're not explaining it properly. Which is interesting to Rudius because Sylphie picked up on it really quickly. Maybe it was an age thing. Again, you explained it well, Rudius. Rudius found this really nostalgic, teaching Linnea how to combine water and fire, explaining the cycle of water and oceans and plants, but it was difficult to get through to her. Still, she had more promise than Ghislaine. Poor Ghislaine. Whenever it comes to magic, Ghislaine is just the punching bag because she just didn't get any of it. He realized that the rain cycle in this world may not work the same with the aspect of summoning water in this world present, which I found kind of interesting because that's the whole concept of this cycle, is this idea of rain coming in, heating up, it, evaporating, going back in the clouds, raining down again, picking up from the oceans and whatnot. And with here, it's adding another element that you can keep creating water. Now, but my mind immediately went to, when he questioned this, if this is different, it immediately made me question, maybe it's not so much that this means there's a more amount, but where are you creating that water from? Are you just turning your mana into it? It creates water, and maybe some of that water turns back into mana? Or is it a possibility when you create water, create earth or fire, it's pulling it from somewhere else? That's the question mark. But again, kind of a shot in the dark theory here that may never get answered, or maybe way later. At some point, Rudius creates a big tidal wave, and then come to find out he drained the ocean of water. If that actually happens, don't say anything. Chat. On the topic of elemental magic, he learned his first Saint tier Earth magic, Sandstorm, a more powerful version of the advanced tier, Duststorm. It blinded people and made it hard to breathe, and left shifting sands in its wake. It was sort of similar to the water spell, Cumulonimbus. Omnimbus. My gosh, that word. Cumulonimbus. Something like that. Cumulonimbus. I don't care. It seems spells of this tier involved changing weather in dramatic ways. And of course, the professor warned him to never use it in towns or cities. It could completely ruin crops. Kind of similar to his other spells. The professor was also surprised that he was never familiar with it. Based on the fact that Rudius knows all these spells, the king tier level, and he does silent casting. At any rate, he was now qualified as a saint tier earth magician. Pachi. Which, yes, it kind of figures at this point, I'm kind of interested in actually getting to that level with all the elements, so he's got 2 more elements to go, if he can track down a professor for them. Bodyguardi also did say that the destructive level of his stone cannon was at the level of an Imperial. This made Rudius wonder if he can now call himself an Emperor tier magician. Oddly enough, when he asked the professor about that, the professor said you can call himself whenever he wanted, sensing a slight edge in his remark. So Rudius decided not to. It's kind of one of those moments where you kind of wonder, I mean, what Rudius says is nothing good would come from advertising yourself as a master mage. Is the professor literally saying, we got a sense of, what was it? I think it was Regerd. A long time ago. We're going way back, so I don't even remember who it was. I think it was Regerd. At some point, somebody mentioned, you can call yourself whatever you want. If you want to be a king tier this or a saint tier this, maybe it was Ghislaine. Do it. It's fine. Whatever. It doesn't mean, oh no, that's what it was. I think Rudius was asking Ghislaine about specifically somebody that was like multiple things, like a magic swordsman or something like that. And Ghislaine, at least from Ghislaine's perspective, she was kind of brushing it off like it doesn't matter. And I think what we're getting here is that, yes, for certain situations, you're going to have to classify what you are. If you want to advertise yourself for a really big event, you're going to want to say, don't worry, I'll become a part of the group. And they go, well, what are you? Well, I'm an Emperor tier magician. Okay, you could obviously come because you're going to be the level that we're going to need. Whereas if you said, oh, I'm intermediate, they're like, no, you're not going to survive. It's important when you're trying to classify yourself for a threat or prepare yourself for a threat. But outside of that, it's just a title. In the end, it's just a title. Nobody cares. And yes, it makes you look like you're gloating unless it's necessary to establish how powerful you are. And I think right here, he's kind of warning Rudius, at least saying that it's a slight edge to his remark, saying, you can call yourself whatever you want. It's kind of one of those things of going, sure, if you want to advertise that, good luck. Do you really want to advertise yourself? Is it only going to bring you problems? Is it going to get you too much attention? Or will it set expectations too high? Rudius has said several times before that he doesn't want to set the expectations high for people because then they expect too much from him and he might fail. I would have that sense. I think I would have that mindset the whole time there. If I was Rudius doing adventuring, I would constantly not want to set expectations high for myself. And people go, I think even Counter Arrow did that. At some point, oh, Rudius is with us. Let's grab an S rank or I think it was an A rank. Let's grab an A rank. And he's like, no, please don't do that and get into something that's too much. He didn't want them to set their expectations too high and then them get all killed because they thought he was going to do something he can't. So again, it's good to not gloat about your power. And yes, technically, a lot of that's to do with the fact that he has a large, massive amount of mana, and he had plenty of time to prepare that spell. You're not always going to have that time. So to claim that you're always going to be able to do what he did to Barigari in tight situations, again, is setting expectations too high. In the early afternoon, he headed to Nanahoshi's. The front room was stuffed with junk, so much it was cramped. Beyond that was the experimentation chambers, and then beyond that was her bed chambers. She was keeping quite a bit of food in the corner near where she slept. She was a world-class shut-in, which was saying something when it came from him. His role in this whole thing was channeling mana into magic circles that she created, which she had a lot of them. She was testing all sorts of patterns in a trial and error approach. Tests she previously decided that she would not do due to the limit of resources of crystals that she could acquire. Again, I mentioned this in the previous Mushoku Mondays. She's basically having like, okay, we'll change this a little bit, try again, pour your mana into it. Okay, we're gonna move it a little bit here, pour mana into it. And again, without Rudius there, she has no mana to do anything with. So she had to get all these crystals, and they were limited. And so if she bought too much of them, she would draw attention to herself. People would hate her for it. They need those resources for other stuff. So Rudius is allowing her to do what she wasn't able to do, or be able to afford, even if she does have a lot of wealth. He'd channel into them, they would mostly fail. Some would summon wings or insect legs. Now and again, this is another one that I mentioned in the previous Mushoku Monday, this idea of like how tedious this is, and how any organization, how any town, how any researcher would want to waste all this mana and resources just to summon an insect leg. Now, the interesting thing here that I immediately question is, what are they summoning from? I know my mind immediately goes to, where did these come from? Did they summon a wing from somewhere else in this world? Or is she already right here, not knowing probably that she's getting closer? What if an insect leg got summoned from our world? What if she's that close? What if she's that close already? Now, the other thing that kind of immediately jumps in my head, and I think they get into it later on, is what happens when she finally summons somebody. Because that's what she's doing. She's trying to reenact what happened before, that how she got there. She's trying to figure out what summon circle could bring her there. She's trying to summon somebody from our world. That seems pretty screwed up. Because her thought process is to bring him over and then reverse it. Or figure out how it works and then reverse it. That's kind of scary, Nanahoshi. What if you can't figure out how to reverse? You're just going to have another casualty. Or you're going to summon somebody's body, and their soul is not going to go with it. They're going to die. Anyways, I'm getting way ahead of myself. What exactly is the goal of these experiments? I want to learn how to summon a human being from our old world. Right now, we're laying the groundwork for the groundwork of a theory that might get us there. Okay, I understand the general plan, but if we summon someone the same way you were summoned here, aren't we going to just cause another huge disaster? Believe me, I have no intentions of creating a second displacement incident, but if I can move a few stages further along in my research, I should be able to nail down a theory regarding why it happened. Again, from the only thing we're establishing here, despite the fact that she's talking about summoning a human being from our world to there, which I think is cruel, his focus is more to the immediate threat here, which is, okay, last time you're trying to get to what happened when you brought here. Do you remember what happened around you? But it seems like she's moving slowly. She's being very careful and moving things until it gets to where she wants it. She's being very methodical about this. Sure, I know things go wrong in experiments all the time. Just be careful, okay? Lots of people died because of that whole mess. It's not just experiments, Rudius. Things always go wrong no matter what we do. I'm very aware of all the risks, all right? That's why I'm taking things so cautiously. Rudius did seem to notice that she was building slowly and methodically to something. And again, something that I think that she can't do without Rudius's help. Because again, they're going one step at a time. And very tediously, probably. I can't imagine how tedious this is. You know, I'd like to learn some summoning magic myself. Summoning magic is my lifeline. I can't go around handing my knowledge out freely. I thought you said something about teaching me what I want to know. She clicked her tongue. Like, darn it. I thought he was going to forget. All right, fine. Once we're done with this experiment, I'll answer one question for you. One question after all of these? You paid terribly, Nanahoshi. Once we're really finished, I'll head back to my home, and you can have all of my research, knowledge, and connections I leave behind. So for now, just try to be a little patient. Again, this is that point where she's basically saying, have everything. Again, she's not going to take any of this stuff with her. So she's like, just have it all. Now, I would say, grab a couple of, magic crystals before you head back. Of course, again, the big question mark there is when she was summoned from the other world to this world with her body, what came with her? Did she have her school bag? Did she have her umbrella? Did she have nothing? Was it just her body? And so she's out in the middle of that field naked, and then Orsa comes up and just kind of covers her up. Did we do like the Terminator 2 style of summoning, as people were saying in the chat last week? Don't know what she was able to bring with her. She then handed him a book titled Sig's Summoning. If you're that interested, do a little studying yourself. At this point, Rudius has pretty much stopped visiting the library for hours on end. But Fitz did visit them at Nanahoshi's. It made him realize how grueling this work was. Fitz went up there and was only able to do about 20 scrolls before Fitz was spent. So it kind of gives that indication here is like, okay, he's doing this all day, over and over again. It doesn't really indicate how many Rudius does compared. This is crazy, Rudius. Activating one of these things is as much mana as casting an advanced spell. Rudius honestly didn't know if it was Nanahoshi's magic circles that costed so much, or if it was just summoning magic in general. Is she creating something that's more advanced and is requiring more, or, again, is it something that's more in effect of, just in general, that's what summoning magic does? Because again, he doesn't really have much experience with summoning magic. But it still was bizarre that scrolls with no effect costed so much. Again, they're summoning a bug leg, and it's just using so much. But he does realize here, maybe there's a reason why it's taking so much. Again, and maybe it's both. Maybe summoning magic takes a lot, but maybe it's because she's creating circles that are trying to summon things from a different world. This is where it's already sort of trying to indicate what I was mentioning earlier. The bug leg, the wing, possibly it's taking so much mana because it's having to reach to another world and pull it over. So maybe she's onto something at this point. Unfortunately, Fitz at this point decided it's best that he doesn't help them because still has to protect Ariel. So if he spends all of his mana here and then goes back and somebody attacks, he ain't gonna be able to protect her. Which Rudius was okay with, but it did seem like it made Fitz very gloomy. Rudius thought it was a pride thing. But Rudius assured Fitz that he was just happy to have him around. He really didn't want to send him off just because he wasn't useful to him. He's been supporting him for a long time. Please keep coming back here with me, if you have time, Master Fitz. We've been looking for answers for months now, right? Let's keep pursuing the truth together. Sure, thanks, Rudius. That blushing smile was seriously powerful. Rudius figured Fitz was only about 13, but he'd become a lady killer. Does that sound familiar to you, Rudius? Who did you tell that to, Rudius? Seriously, come on, dude. But Fitz was so cute now, Rudius had problems not responding to him as if he was a girl. As they headed back to the dorms, Fitz welcomed Rudius to walk down the path near the girls' dorms. Seems he had become very popular amongst the girls. Rudius obviously took down the bad guys, but never harmed normal students. And the girls were taking note of this. Remember back when they called him a panty thief? What happened? He didn't touch those girls. He didn't do anything to harm them. They were doing what were technically a good thing, and he didn't harm them. He only attacked bad guys. Still, Rudius thought he was making all this up. He had heard all the whispers about how intimidating and bad he was. They were all scared of you at first, but Linnea and Priscilla went around telling them, our boss was a nice guy, yeah. He never picks on weaklings. It was cute. Unfairly cute seeing him imitate Linnea with the cat ears. After that, their opinion of you improved really fast. I mean, your clothings are a little shabby, but your face is kind of handsome. And some of the girls like that gloomy look. Oh, and you're not a pushy jerk, even though you're really powerful. Rudius realized at this point, man, they've been doing a lot of good work out there, improving his image. And again, that was kind of one of those things that I was kind of worried about with them making everybody think that he's this big new bad guy on the street, turning him into a bully. They were actually helping improve his image. He had to repay them somehow. He knew that he can get Priscilla some meat to repay, but he wasn't really sure what he's going to get Linnea. Apparently, they were also the reason why Goliad reacted so much. They've been pestering her over the incident. And Fitz never intervened. She was hoping that Goliad would learn something from it, but at the same time, Rudius is like, that's not the answer. That's bullying. I don't think she meant badly. please don't harass her too much, okay? I'd appreciate if you'd pass that along to Linnea and Priscilla as well. Rudius, at this point, was very stern about his voice. Nobody's harassing her, Rudius. It's more like they're teasing her every so often. I don't think she's scared or anything, just a little exacerbated. Still, Rudius knew that a long-running joke like that could turn into actual bullying, which I've honestly experienced this a lot. This idea that you have this joke, and at first everybody's kind of laughing along with it, but then after like so long, it becomes a normal thing that they don't actually like. I used to work at this one place, and everybody had this nickname for this guy. It wasn't a bad nickname, it was just a nickname. And at some point, I started working there, and at some point, I asked him, like, do you want to be called that, or do you want me to call you this over the radio? And he's like, no, just call me my name. He didn't want it, but he never told anybody. It didn't seem like he told anybody. He just it just became a thing, and he never really liked it. Okay, so long as it's all in good fun, that's fine. But for the record, I'm not holding a grudge or anything. Can you please keep an eye out to make sure things don't go too far? You're really a nice guy, Rudius. Sure, I'll let Galliard know. As Fitz continued, he turned and assured Rudius that he can take the path near the dorms. But Rudius in the end didn't want to ruin his good streak. Fitz accepted his choice, looking a little sad, and walked away. Later, Rudius continued his training with Julie. She was an information sponge. While she was limited in mana capacity and her accuracy wasn't up to par, she was really skillful with her hand. Which again, we've kind of noted this, that dwarves have dexterous hands, so she's really good at actually doing manual labor. With this dexterity, she was able to do the precision works that her magic failed to do. At the same time, Rudius was also working on his new figurine. He's got his new plans for his next figurine. He gave up on Edis. He set up things with doing the red worm for Zenobia, but his new project was a 1/8 scale Master Fitz. The problem is, Fitz always wore all these layers, so he didn't really know what the figure was underneath it. So, and he was kind of conflicted with what was he gonna put between the legs? Which I immediately thought when I read this, like, you made a lot of assumptions with Ghislaine's, which again, technically, Ghislaine, it was not much clothes to work with. It's technically the same with Edis, but hey, I would say how'd he know how to create Roxy's, but yes, he technically did peek in on Roxy when she was bathing, so never mind. Ghislaine's the only problem child in that whole theory. But yes, he didn't know what to put between Fitz's legs. He was conflicted. He didn't want to put something down there, but at the same time, he didn't want Fitz to think that he was depicting him as a girl. Which, Zenobia, being best bro, was like, that's alright, I could just... Master, I could just sneak up on him and rip his clothes off. But Rudius declined it. No, we don't want to do that. And yes, of course, Zenobia was working on the red worm, which was a slow progress, but it was good for him because it was such a large size that it was easier for him to work on. Before Rudius called it a night for the day, he decided to read Sig's summoning book that he got from Nanahoshi. It was about a witch named Sig, who summoned many fearsome fiends for various reasons. In the end, she used an enormous offering and mana to call forth a creature stronger than her. It promptly killed her and ate her. Her student bitterly lamented the tragedy and swore to never summon anything beyond control. Rudius felt this was a good takeaway. If he used all of his mana to summon the strongest creature he could, it would be too much for him to handle. He made sure to understand the risk before doing anything dramatic. Even though you're just sitting there summoning over and over again with Nanahoshi. But again, Nanahoshi is being very methodical about it. Sadly, the book didn't really offer much information. It didn't talk about the circles, it didn't talk about what kind of fiends were summoned. Besides the message in it, it was kind of useless. At this point in his life at the university, he felt like he'd missed his chance to cure his illness. Maybe it was a wrong turn to meet Nanahoshi. Maybe the man god's prophecy left him too optimistic. However, he'd soon find out things would move towards an unexpected resolution. Flag for the next, 3 chapters. I am really curious as to why Nanahoshi had him read this book. The only assumption I can make is to kind of show him that she is being very careful about what she's doing, and that him with his large mana capacity, he could make a big mistake. Maybe she's seen in this book Rudius. Maybe he needs to read this to know with great power comes great responsibility. Something like that. It does make you kind of wonder. Chapter 8. Clueless but perceptive. Winter had arrived. Thanks to the magical implements, the pathways were kept clear. Not long after the season arrived, Rudius received a letter from Soldat Heckler. Soldat! Best bros back. Technically, because of the whole situation with Badigati, yes, Thunderbolt was called into the town, and they already received that message, and by the time they arrived, they found out, oh wait, never mind, it's okay, everything's fine, but they were still there. So Thunderbolt decided to kind of have conferences, because they usually do that every 2 to 3 months, so they figure, well, you're here, let's do the conference. Being an S rank and also part of the clan leadership, this meant that Soldat had to attend a lot of meetings, even if he didn't get along with the leadership. But Soldat's mood shifted, remembering that Rudius was in the area. Fitz was busy with guard duty, but Cliff and Elise decided to join him. Rudius didn't know what Soldat and his guys would think when they met Elise's new boyfriend. As they walked, Cliff boasted his new research plans. He was studying curses intensely for a goal of lifting Elise's curse. But curses had been around and studied since ancient times. 6 months didn't yield him much success. However, Cliff was full of confidence, not giving up. He was a genius, of course. Rudius admired his resolve. After so many failures, he's not giving up. He's stuck on it. He's going to fix Elise, basically. At this point, Cliff requested Rudius to share any information that he had. But this made Rudius cringe in fear. The man god told him about the curses that Orsted had, so immediately made him think of Orsted. Additionally, Laplace was cursed, and he gave that curse to the spears, which he gave to the Superds. So he spoke up. Well, I've heard that Laplace once transferred his own curse into a number of objects, and used it to pass it on to a certain tribe of demons. Objects? Right. To be specific, the spears of the Superds used in the Laplace War. Thanks to the curse on the weapons, they lost their sanity, and ended up getting a reputation as mindless killers. What? I've never heard of that before. Is that actually true? Well, I only heard it secondhand, so I can't say for sure. At this point, Rudius is realizing, oh yeah, that's right. The man god told me all this stuff. This isn't common knowledge in this world. That's why everybody hates the Superds. Nobody knows this except for Rudius. Either way, it's a most intriguing concept. I didn't know it was possible to transfer a curse into an object. I don't know how you would do it though, sorry. That's all right. Just knowing it's been done before is very helpful. Rudius wasn't sure if there was anybody else that has done it before, or if it was a taboo. He thought there might be some sort of precedent for trying to move blessings to different vessels, like with a blessed or cursed child. This is starting to open up a massive can of worms. I mean, the thought that he immediately thinks of the curse on Orsted and the curse on Laplace, it's an ultimate conclusion to come up to of, oh yeah, technically, I do have knowledge of somebody with a curse that was technically able to remove the curse, or at least transfer it over to something. And even with, like with Azurd, he got that spear, he had the curse, and the man god mentions the idea that that curse is slowly fading. It's going away. So it's at least implying this idea that somebody was able to give it to somebody else. At the same time, somebody that received it, it depleted. There's no real confirmation here that Laplace gave all of his curse to the spears, or if he just gave some of it away. But at still the same time, it's also improving that a curse can go away. How that goes away is a big question mark. Is it just fade over time, or is there some other effect happening here? But even still, the logical conclusion here, and that Cliff is getting into it, oh, what if I could take Elise's curse and give it to an object? Remove it from her by bestowing upon an object. It makes sense as a way of getting rid of her curse and making a really sex-crazed orb. I don't know, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that might want that curse. There might be somebody out there that wants that curse. Rudius would want that curse if it could help him. But again, that's another kind of big question mark. Did Rudius just open a can of worms into this world? What if Cliff takes this knowledge and uses it for other stuff? Maybe it works. Maybe Cliff uses this knowledge and it works, and he cures Elise of a curse, puts it into an object, but then realizes, so Zenoba has this incredible strength. What if I could take that strength from him? Transfer any curse or blessing of a child into another person. Transfer it to another vessel. It's intriguing. Cliff, do you know of anyone that's ever tried transferring a blessing, or rather a curse? What do the blessings have anything to do with it? Again, he doesn't know what the man god has told Rudius. They assume that blessed children and cursed children are different things. And again, from the perspective of the man god, oh, you just create binaries. They're all the same. They're just an ability given to a child. You just choose what's a good thing and what's a bad thing. Realize at this point, we're starting from different points here, which again is, yes, your base knowledge. This isn't a normal thing, a normal bit of knowledge in this world, Rudius. Well, blessed children are the same as cursed ones, right? They're all born with some strange thing about their mana, which gives them odd powers. The only difference is whether the effects happens to be positive or negative. Then Cliff says, that's news to me. Rudius realized at this point this is news to Ellen, Elise, and Cliff. They looked surprised. Yes, everything that he just said was from the man god. You thought at this point, maybe this is a bad thing that I'm getting this information from him because he's just slipping it out. Yeah, like all this stuff he's just slipping out that completely changed the world, and he's just casually just dropping it. Still, this is all very interesting objects, eh? Very interesting indeed. Perhaps I could try that. Cliff looked excited. Rudius at this point wondered if these curses had something to do or some sort of connection with the so-called gods of this world. Man god, dragon god, and a demon god all had at least one. Then, the blessed children were supposedly divine somehow. Is it a connection or coincidence? I don't really know exactly where Rudius is going with this. I hate when he just drops casual bombs and just goes, let's move on. It's like, Rudius, what are you insinuating here? Are you insinuating that these people, these blessed children, are somehow like divine beings that were birthed through one of these gods? Or is it a possibility that these gods are cursing or blessing these children? Because these gods of this world have some sort of curse upon them or some sort of ability, what's the link with them and cursed children and blessed children? Cliff said in several chapters ago, this idea that from their perspective, from the world's perspective, the blessed children specifically were people that were touched by the divine. That's why is Zenobed learning magic? He's touched. He's got special abilities. He's special. Why would he seek this magic? Their perspective is that these gods of this world are blessing them, giving them some sort of touch that enhances them. So maybe, again, right here, he's specifying that what are they, if they're possibly born from some sort of part of the gods themselves, or again, is it like a Laplace thing where they're cursed? And sometimes those curses can be good things. In the end, again, these are the same. They're not binaries, good and bad. It's from our perspective, what is good, what is bad? Hey, Quagmire, long time no see. I've totally forgotten Soldat's voice at this point. Quagmire. Damn it, Quagmire. They agreed with smiles and found a place to settle down in a nearby tavern. Obviously, upon hearing the news about Ellen and Elise, Step Leader's members were amused, cracking jokes. Obviously, this set off Cliff, who nearly, exchanged some blows, but Ellen and Elise settled him down and changed the subject very quickly. Rudius was surprised how she was able to do this, but he realized that he never seen her get sulky or mad. She's really good at keeping her emotions down, or at least he's not seen that side of her yet. Which I wonder if Cliff's seen that side of her when he announced that he was going to help her. But Rudius was curious again. What happened between her and Paul? Paul seems to be the only thing that he knows Ellen Elise is angry at. What the hell did he do? I really want to know now. We got to eventually get into it. We got into Lilia's story, and I'm sure eventually we'll get into Ellen Elise's story. At this point, the chatter turned to Rudius' school outfit. It made him look like a rookie. Rudius kind of retorted, talking about how he can help them carry their luggage around, which they said no. Every one of them carries their own goods. Which, yes, it kind of led into them talking about how they lugged all that stuff back from the Red Worm kill. This led into the Step Leader talking about all their recent adventures. Cliff's eyes went from sulky, which again, he wanted to be an adventurer, so he'd look a little sulky at first. But then, he turned to excitement. His eyes were full of excitement. Hearing these stories made him excited. Sadly, their chat came to a halt. Soldat was called to another meeting. Poor Soldat. Well, they kind of figured at this point they would wrap up things because they just lost their host. Ellen Elise suggested that they teach Cliff a few things about adventuring. Everybody was excited about it. Yeah, sure, let's do it. Let's take her out. She knew, based on Cliff's face, he wanted to try it. So she wanted to do something for him. It was so cute. So cute. But yes, everybody was on board except for Rudius. He's like, no, I don't think this is a good idea. In his own mind, he's thinking it'd probably be really bad for somebody that's younger than Cliff, pretty much telling him what to do. So overthinking it, he decided that he was going to part ways with them. He also thought that it wouldn't be good to continue to avoid Nanahoshi too long. She gets angry, apparently. Being a shut-in, she was weirdly hungry for company. She gets sulky if he went days without visiting her. Granted, he did understand that she didn't want to be in this world. But as someone that decided to keep living in this world, it was hard to resist telling her to go outside more often. This text just jumped out and smacked me in the face. I just like, dang, Rudius. Does that sound familiar? Again, let's go way back to Shut-In Rudius in the previous world. Everybody's at the door telling him, come on, you can do it. Just come outside for a little bit. Go back to school. You can do it. You're strong. You can get over this. It's okay. Again, this is from the perspective of people that are outside of his little shell. And they know that there's good things out here. and they want him to come out and experience them to get out of this rut that he's in. And now right here, knowing how great the world is, and he's having so much fun hanging out with everybody, and they're talking about adventures and stuff, and then he goes back to this dark, quiet room where Nanahoshi is, and he's tempted to tell her, come out and try it. You're so focused on going back. Come out and try it. He's become his parents. He's become his siblings, trying to get him to go outside. After Rudius warns Elnalace not to, go too far, that you do have a beginner with you, he parted ways with them. He started to regret overthinking and not going with Cliff. He wandered around the commercial district. The conversation about curse transfers had him interested in magic items. The cursed spears were presumably magical implements of some sort, which that's a weird assumption. That's a weird assumption. I mean, I guess I can see it. If it's a magical implement, it's able to absorb something of magic if a curse is somehow magic. Again, they mentioned the idea that it's sort of an anomaly within the mana of somebody, so it's mana, and magical implements draw mana. He hadn't given much thought to magical implements up to this point, due to their price. But Fitz had some, and Nanahoshi had a few handy ones. Again, I was thinking about that when she brought out the 3 rings. I'm like, that's perfect for you, Rudius. If you're having problems with the defense, those seem really handy. I don't know how often they can be used, but if they are magical implements, and he has this massive unending supply, well, not unending, but this massive supply of mana, you could probably use it multiple times, depending on how much mana it takes. But this is where we get into clarifying magical implements and magical items. Rudius had been mistaken on the difference between the two of them, which was kind of funny because when I read this, I'm like, no, this is pretty much what I assumed. Like, I had this assumption based on the talk about the labyrinths and the talk that they've done so far about magical implements. But magical implements and magical items were two distinct things. Magical implements were man-made objects with magic circles engraved on them, which again, they talked about that whole idea of engraving and creating them and all that kind of stuff. Chanting a specific incantation, one's mana was supplied through it, producing an effect. As long as their mana wasn't exhausted, it could be used indefinitely. So again, this is a reusable item. This is a tool, but it's limited to your mana pool. Magic items were objects infused with their own supply of mana. Again, going back to the whole discussion about the labyrinths, they went down to labyrinths not usually to get the core, which was valuable. It was to find random objects that were dropped by monsters and people that died. Because over time, mana is sucked through these tunnels to the core, and it would go through the objects, infusing them with mana. For the magic items, you activated them through gesture or action, so you didn't have to memorize an incantation. They could only produce their effects a few times per day, and the mana would regenerate over several hours. So this is limited, even if you have a large mana capacity. Unless there's some way that we'll find out later that you can re-energize it with your own mana. There was also weapons known as magic swords, which were man-made, that had the qualities of magic items. But all this meant that magical items were more practical and useful. There was no need for mana or memorizing an incantation. But most were deep within labyrinths and were random in capability. Thus, the more powerful ones were really astronomically priced. Fitz's boots, which were made him go faster, were probably worth more than everything Rudius owned. The nice thing was, of course, like I mentioned earlier, Rudius has an insane amount of mana. So magical implements were okay for him. As Rudius walked around, he noticed Luke and Fitz chatting near a clothing store. Here it starts. Here it all starts. The beginning. The beginning. It's a secret. I gotta use it a couple more times before it goes away. I know, I'm probably gonna drag it out for the rest of the volumes. Every time a secret jumps up. Anyways. Fitz was eyeballing a trinket with a delighted look. And Luke had a smile too. Was it a date? Rudius thought that Fitz was guarding Ariel. Good afternoon. I wasn't expecting to run into you here. What the? Rudius. Luke spun around with a shocked look on his face. Fitz seemed different though. Rudius couldn't put his finger on it. Master Fitz, did you change your look or something? Fitz had a face of shock when he looked at Rudius. His body seemed more rounded out somehow. Rudius continued to study Fitz. But then, Fitz turned away. Luke put himself between the two of them. Luke spoke up. Hello there, Rudius. What are you doing here? Did you need something from us? He was hiding Fitz from him, like an overprotective boyfriend. He was also calm, with a sharp gaze, and not openly hostile. There was definitely tension in his voice, though. Maybe it was actually a date. Maybe Luke swung both ways. Not really, I just saw the two of you and thought I'd say hello. Master Fitz? Was Fitz giving him the cold shoulder? He wasn't looking at him. I see. Thank you for the greetings. I have to remind you, though, that Fitz isn't supposed to speak while he's on guard duty. I'm sure you understand, yes? Rudius realized that he was trying to be friendly about it, but he was trying to chase him off. It was possibly an inconvenient moment, but he still felt it was really harsh that Fitz was ignoring him. Luke spoke up again. What's the matter? It's nothing. Please excuse me. Rudius walked off, hiding his hurt that Fitz shunned him. He lost all desire to window shopping and went home. Poor Rudius is like a tail between his leg going back home. On his way back, he kept wondering why Fitz did that. Rudius really wished that he had somebody to vent to. Zenoba was at the Magician's Guild doing his research for the Blessed Children. Lenny and Priscilla were an option, but they probably wouldn't take it serious. Everyone was busy or off campus. Instead, Rudius went to the library. As he entered, Fitz was there, sitting in their usual spot, reading a book. Oh, hi there, Rudius. Back already? I thought you'd be staying out. Did you meet your friend at least? Oh, hi there, Rudius. Yeah, it was odd. His clothing and everything was normal. Rudius had gone straight here. What's wrong? Is there something on my face? Rudius was confused as to why he was acting this way. He snubbed Rudius 5 minutes ago, and now he's relaxed and trusting. Why did you ignore me earlier? Fitz's smile froze. Then he assumed a serious expression. Well, you know, I'm actually not supposed to talk to anyone when I'm on guard duty. I'm Silent Fitz after all, you know. My voice is kind of childish, so people don't take me serious when I speak. When I'm in public, particularly when I'm guarding the Princess Ariel, she wants me to keep quiet as much as possible. Yes, at this point, like I said, spoilers for anybody that's actually reading along with me and isn't people that are watching it, re-experiencing it through me. Spoilers for Chapter 10. This is pretty much at this point insinuating the idea that, and he'll get into this, oh, maybe Princess Ariel is disguised as Fitz, and Sylphie's been here the whole time disguised as Fitz. Now, I don't know why she would do that. This is like one of those moments where it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I understand what they're doing here. My only real technical beef against what the writer's doing here is why is Sylphie walking around as Fitz when Ariel is disguising herself as Fitz not to be assassinated in town? That seems like a problem. Maybe because they assume they're so far away and that Sylphie might run into Rudius and want to talk to Rudius. Maybe she made this decision outside of what Ariel would want her to do, but it doesn't make any sense here. But yes, it's establishing right here that Ariel has been disguising herself as Fitz in public, and that's why she gave him the cold shoulder. She didn't want to speak up. Is that right? I didn't see Princess Ariel around, though. Oh, she was in one of the nearby stores. It's a place that we can trust. Luke and I aren't her only guards. The others were keeping a watch at her side, while we kept an eye on things from a distance. Don't tell anybody about that, okay? Rudius realizes right now that Fitz was saying this without hesitation. Almost like he had rehearsed it. Like he knew this could possibly happen. They knew something like this could happen. And so they had some sort of this way of describing what's happening. Anyways, Rudius decides to apologize for bugging him while he was at work. At this point, yes, he acknowledged that Ariel could be disguising herself as Fitz. But maybe she couldn't change her voice or her eyes. Maybe that's why Fitz always wore glasses. It made sense. Rudius would easily see through her disguise, so she shunned him. Now, we already established before that Fitz was technically given the glasses to be able to see when Ariel was in danger, but it could have been a ruse to cover up the idea they were going to have to use her as a disguise. But I think they mentioned at some point the glasses activated. I'll have to go back and look. That's a relief, though. I thought you hated me, Master Fitz. It really got me worried there for a minute. Don't be ridiculous, Rudius. I could never hate you, even if I tried. Fitz was always on Rudius's mind lately. Sometimes he'd remember little gestures he would make. The way he scratched his ears. The way he stretched out whenever he finished a task. Sometimes he even thought of his scent when they passed each other in the halls. The bashful grin. Even days when they didn't see each other, Rudius searched for him in a crowd. Rudius knew what this meant. He was in love. He had fallen for a guy. Assuming he was really one, which Rudius wasn't totally convinced of. Depending on Fitz's gender, Rudius would have to come to terms with him changing preference, or possibly just becoming bi. Not that it mattered in the short term, given his condition. He still hoped Fitz would be a girl. But with this in his mind, Rudius had to gather information on the subject. He's not going to do what would Master Fitz think right now. He's going to wait on that. He's going to wait on asking Master Fitz what he thinks. First, he decided to threaten Fitz's fourth-year advisor with Stone Cannon to get information out of him. But still, the guy couldn't reveal anything about Fitz. Of course, Rudius joked about the whole Stone Cannon thing. Next, he went to the vice principal. Sadly again, He was given strict instructions not to talk about Fitz or his employer. Still, he got him to reveal Fitz's gender. He was a man. But Rudius wasn't convinced still. Genius had thought about it for a weirdly long time. Rudius then returned back to his usual spot in the library, giving off a sigh as he sat. It all didn't seem to matter much. Rudius wasn't even sure if he'd be able to confess his feelings. He wasn't even sure what he wanted to happen after he confessed. His body, the way it was, he couldn't take things too far. Again, this is kind of the same thought process he's been having ever since the thing happened with Sarah. I screwed up before, even with Edis. I don't want to screw up now. And then when I try it again, things don't work. And it breaks everything. Sarah hates me, and she walks away. He's afraid of even getting close to somebody. Even if he wants to get his manhood working again, the idea of having a relationship scares him. And I think this is something that I kind of hope would eventually come into context, and it doesn't really even get into, even in with the 10th chapter. This idea that Rudius at some point needs to realize it's... relationships and love isn't always about banging. Like, that's the only thing he ever thinks about, is banging. And it sort of gets into that with chapter 10. It sort of gets in this idea that I just kind of enjoy sitting here. Just enjoy your time. You don't always have to be banging. You're not going to be able to bang all the dang time, no matter where you go. It's only for whenever you're alone together. What are you going to do for the rest of the time if you don't even think about that? He's obsessed with that. It all comes down to this. And if this isn't working, I can't have relationships. So we'll see. We'll see if it fixes that mindset. I don't think it does, though. In the end, he wanted to sleep with Fitz. Do all sorts of things to him. Experiment. Little this, little that. Again, it all comes down to banging. He doesn't think of anything else. He sighed and slumped back. God, I wish I could at least. As he muttered this, he looked forward to find Fitz. Off what? Fitz said as he tilted his head curiously. Rudius leapt up with a yell, losing his footing. Fitz tried to catch him, but they ended up falling on top of each other. Old anime style. Anime trope style 101. Fitz was on top of him, face to face, close, his scent filling Rudius's nose. His hands was wrapped around his hips and his bottom. It was slender and feminine. His little guy started standing at attention. It's finally happening, Rudius. Sorry, Rudius. Flushing bright red, Fitz quickly tried to push himself up off of Rudius. Master Fitz, you're really a girl, aren't you? Fitz paused in shock for a second. No, I told you I'm a man. He, or she, then sprinted to the exit. He or she sprinted. Yes, Rudius at this point is like, I'm done with this. I know what's going on. Rudius now acknowledges what we've all been acknowledging for a while now. Rudius realized she was definitely a girl. And the most important thing in Rudius' mind right now, though, is that his guy was standing up. After 3 long years of slumber, it was saluting. He reached down to make sure that he wasn't dreaming. Aside from that, he knew that Fitz was hiding something from him. But maybe he was hiding his gender for a good reason. Again, they're trying to create this image that Fitz is this strong individual, and maybe possibly revealing that it's a girl, people would see less threat in her. And Rudius realized he couldn't prioritize his feelings over what Fitz wanted, over Fitz concealing his gender. Rudius couldn't reveal her secret. Instead, he had to respect her wishes and help her keep the act up. Of course, yes, he also fantasized this idea that he could use this knowledge to control Fitz. Tell him that, hey, I'll keep your secret if you come with me tonight. Rudius fought it off, though. She had helped him so many times, he couldn't betray her. He would treat her the same as always. But it didn't stop him from writhing in pain and agony over all the comments that he made in front of her. The staff joke, the one-liners at the slave market, things he said when they captured Linnea and Priscilla. Yes, he's realizing very quickly, I wasn't talking to a dude. I was literally talking in front of this girl that I admire so much. Then his little man went back to being a shut-in. But at least his little man wasn't like his old self, pounding on the floor and pestering him all the time. Again, acknowledging his old nasty self. While he wasn't seemingly cured, at least he was hopeful for now. He then headed back to his room for a restless night. Apparently, his partner wasn't recovered enough for him to blow off some steam. He's like, go back there. He's like, God, hurry, I gotta get back to the dorms. No. Gosh, it's so wrong. It's so wrong. I can't understand his pain, but that would be really sucky, I admit. Still, he knew that Fitz could cure his condition. He just didn't know how he was going to go about getting that prescription. Like, he's gonna go to Fitz and go, "Hey man, I need a prescription. I need a little time. I need one more grab on the butt." How's that gonna go? Curing his condition was important, but he wanted to keep Fitz's trust too. He had romantic feelings for her, and he didn't want to make the same mistake he did with Edis. The thought of the man god being amused by him relying on a cross-dressing bodyguard of the princess made him chuckle. He honestly thought that if he was so amused, maybe he can throw Rudius a tip. As Rudius washed his face the next morning, he wondered if his face was appealing to Fitz. He had Paul's bad boy womanizer look mixed with his mother's soft features. But he had to stop himself. He wasn't going to do anything to Fitz. That was his official stance for now. Like, amongst everything, this desire, like, I got it. It's right here. I can taste it. I had the sensation. It was going. But at what cost if I keep pursuing this? Again, still even to this point, he highly respects his relationship with Fitz. Again, he looks up to Fitz, thinks Fitz is so useful, kind, helps him all the time. Do I want to ruin that? This is obviously important to Fitz. Does my own selfish desires take priority over Fitz? No. I gotta respect that. Then he noticed a hair on his chin. A whisker. Oh, I'm at that age now. Getting a little scruff going on. He wondered if it was the same for all races. He wondered if Fitz was hairy down there. You were just talking about stopping this, Rudius. Something about that thought nagged at him for some reason. It felt like he was on the verge of remembering something. It just wasn't coming to him. I wonder if they're hairy down there. I do remember one time where I did see an elf down there. It's starting to click for him. Oh, Rudius. 2 days had passed and Rudius had no contact with Fitz. He didn't want to go tracking him down. After another day, Rudius ended up running into Luke. "Hello there, Master Luke. What are you doing here at this hour? I need to speak to you regarding Fitz." "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, is that a fact?" Rudius realized he had a challenging tone. Maybe he was kind of prodding to see if Rudius would claim that it was a female and they would kind of stomp it down and Rudius would just go along with it. Still, was it bad that he knew the truth? He was technically a gray rat. And yes, he had ties with the Boreas family at some point. Technically, he was a son of Paul. He didn't know what they thought of Paul. Whatever the case, he decided it was just a good idea to express his intentions while he had the chance. Yes, what it's suggesting here is that, yeah, if he got in contact with certain people in Ashura, it could be devastating to them to reveal that this Fitz character isn't what they think it is. I don't know what the extent of that is going to cause, because Fitz is still powerful in the end. But again, it kind of comes down to sometimes just what your preconceived notion is about the opponent you're facing. It might give an assassin more confidence if they felt like who they were facing was a girl. I don't know. Just to reiterate, Luke, I have no intentions of making enemies of you people, and I don't know anything about Fitz, or any secrets he may be hiding. You're willing to pretend that you don't know anything. Why? Well, I'm not connected to the Boreas or the Notos families at this point. And more importantly, it would be a little scary to get on the princess's bad side. Luke flashed a surprised look, but then fell silent. Anyways, that's all I've got to say. Right. Sorry to have bothered you. After classes, Rudius headed to Nanahoshi's to their regular experiments. He was shocked to find Fitz standing just outside. Imagine that Luke went back and told him what Rudius said, and he's like, yeah, I guess go back to him. Don't worry about it. Just continue what you're doing. It's not a bad thing. I do honestly believe that after that whole incident, Fitz probably went to Ariel and said, I think I screwed up. Ariel, what'd I do? And then Luke went in and checked on Rudius and then came back and said, he's going to feign ignorance. Don't worry about it. He said that he doesn't know. He probably does, but just continue what you're doing. If that's what you want, keep doing it. Though I would assume that's probably going to be in the Sylphie 0 chapter, which I haven't read yet. Rudius was shocked to find Fitz there because Fitz was supposed to be on guard duty that day. Like, he kind of knew her schedule. Like, he knew when she was supposed to be guarding the Ariel. Rudius assumed this had probably had something to do with his encounter with Fitz and his conversation with Luke. Maybe Fitz was sent to keep an eye on him. He just thinks, like, are they going to assassinate me now? He does actually think that later on. After a moment of silence, Nanahoshi spoke up while drawing a new magic circle. What is this? Did the two of you have a fight or something? No, we didn't have a fight or anything. Look, I don't care either way. Just don't drag me into your nonsense. She's so mean. Nanahoshi's so mean. Like, whatever's happened. Again, she did mention this idea that people here aren't real to her. Nothing here is real to Nanahoshi. So them having an actual issue between them personally that could affect their relationship doesn't matter to Nanahoshi. She's like, I don't want to get involved. I just want to get this done and get back home. The day's experiments were awkward and silent. The only break in silences was every now and then Nanahoshi would click her tongue. Afterwards, Rudius made his way to the dorms with Fitz. Rudius really wanted to talk about something. Act like normal. Before he could hit on anything, they reached the fork in the road. Hey, Rudius. Yes, what is it? She lowered her hand from her mouth and squeezed her fist on her chest. She was going to say something important. Maybe about his gender. Sorry, it's nothing. Actually, bye. Okay then, see you. Fitz trotted off towards his dorm. Rudius let out a breath with an unpleasant feeling in his chest. He decided not to cause him any trouble if he could, but this was a little bit too hard to take. That is chapter 8. Obviously, at this point, I am not going to be able to do chapter 9 and 10, and I was told specifically I must do chapter 9 and 10 at the same time. I'm not allowed to not do chapter 9 and 10 at the same time. And it makes sense after reading them. They really do go together, so I hate to say it, but I'm going to conclude it with that. It breaks my heart because I really don't like to getting... I hate whenever I've read ahead and I'm not able to read into it. Technically, I had that case last week with 7, but good chapters. Overall, good chapters. And it's sad, though, because a lot of this is just build up to what I now know in 9 and 10. This is a build up to seeing a breaking point in the relationship between Rudius and Fitz. And I think it's a good thing, honestly. I think it's in a retrospect, I think these chapters are good for the build-up of what's to come because this is the breaking point for Fitz. She got too comfortable. Sylphie got too comfortable. I can just be Fitz and hang out with Rudius. And the entire time, whenever she thought about possibly revealing and taking off the mask, it scared her. No, just keep the mask on. I'm comfortable. She's comfortable. It's the worst thing to get in your life sometimes is when you're comfortable. You have options available, be it a job or relationship or something. Say for a job, you get comfortable with the job that you're in. Don't step out of line. If you step out of line, sometimes it can prove to be a mistake. Just stay comfortable. Oh, another job opportunity, but will it be as comfortable as now? Don't take it, even though it's probably an advancement in my field. No, just stay comfortable. And yes, relationship-wise, I'm comfortable with this. Do I want to take it further? I could break everything by stepping up. I can't. Stay comfortable. That's what Fitz is. And the moment that this little anime trope happens and they fall on each other, Rudy speaks out. You're a girl. Breaks her. Crap, and like I said before, I think that she rushed off to Ariel, told her what happened, and that kind of shook things up. We can't keep up the facade. If you're going to keep doing this, like earlier mentioned, if you're not going to step forward, stop using Fitz. Put an end to it. And yes, even later on, Ariel says that. Put an end to it. If you're not going to do this, stop. I want you to stop. I will admit that also the fact of what happens in 9 and 10 is so, like, it just reveals everything for what we're kind of building up to here. The only reason I still want to do 7 and 8 is really around the aspects of the magic stuff. There was so much stuff that was hinted on in these two chapters. We're getting into, like I said, detoxification, the advancements of that, the aspect of the incantations themselves, the shrinking of them, which does show technically some innovation in contrary to what Nanahoshi said about magics. Now, granted, it's not making new magics, but it's making them simpler. It's evolving them in some way, and it's obviously because it's very... It sucks having to say this long incantation, but it makes you curious at some point if he'll get into what's involved in that. How exactly is it shortened? Is it like taking thes out of a sentence or taking out a's out of a sentence so you still get the context of the main key words, the verbs and whatnot in the sentence so it still technically activates? Or is there something else to that and they might get into? Also getting to battle auras, which again, I really do hope they revisit. I really hope this isn't it for Rudius trying to do battle auras because it feels like that makes sense to him. Now, again, they've already introduced another aspect in this chapter about magical implements and the idea that if something like what Nanahoshi has, which I imagine, yes, Nanahoshi would have to have magic items. Those would not be magical implements because, again, magical implements draw mana out of you, whereas magical items have their own source, which, yes, does mean that they have a limit. She would only take so many blows, depending on how... I mean, some magical items could have more uses. Like, these rings on her could probably be from... I just have, like, this mental image of, like, playing MMOs, where you're playing an MMO and you're, like, max level, and you're just getting, like... You kill a mob in the max levels, and you get, like, all this insane loot, and you're just kind of keeping it all because maybe at some point you run into a newbie, and then you just, like, start throwing all this high-level stuff at them, and then they start putting it on, they're like, holy crap, I'm beefy. Like, you just completely buff up your friend who just started playing the game. That's the feeling I have. Like Nanahoshi traveling around, and he probably goes into labyrinths all the time, and then he's like, a ring. I don't know why, but I'll just stick it in my pocket. Like, he just keeps it for... It was probably stuff that he grabbed on their travels. Or it could be people that she talked to, or through the money that she made, she bought a bunch of items. Knowing that she has no defenses, she probably used her money to buy, like, some really expensive magical items. Either way, if it's from Orsted, who's trying to beef her up, or if she bought it with her own stuff, but they had to be magic items because she doesn't have mana. Now, again, from Rudy's perspective, he can go both ways. If he can find a really good magic item like that, but what she's got on her fingers are probably super expensive. And again, I would assume, hopefully, has like massive amounts of charges per use. Like, these are like, I'm hoping, are really high level things that are really expensive that maybe can be used 50 times a day. It would suck if they're only like a couple times. But again, Rudy's has multiple options. Either an extremely expensive magic item, or a reusable, using mana, magical implement that could use the same effect. So I kind of hope that we revisit that at some point, because that is a major option for him to find a magical implement that might consume a lot of mana just to produce that same effect. But since he has this massive mana pool, why not? But either that or get it back to the battle ores. Just get back to the battle ores. But again, I think because they brought this up, I think that's the direction it's going to go. It's going to go the direction of magical implements. But again, it's like, if it takes exercise, it takes utilizing it over and over again to master it, why'd you give up so quickly? You were obviously creating an effect. Why would you stop now? Unless the assumption is that, well, you have been training and it never happened. And this is something that normally comes to you when you're training. And so if it hasn't happened by now, it's not going to happen. Now, you can create the effect, but it doesn't work. Maybe that's probably the direction they're taking it. So, like I said, I did love getting into that stuff. So it's just got like a lot of really good, juicy stuff in here for me, world building wise, that I just really do enjoy. So either way, even despite the fact that I know 9 and 10 are the big ones, and I know a lot of people are probably upset that we're not getting into 9 and 10 this week, that's why. There's still, every chapter needs to be covered. And so they're not always going to be the big ones. It's big for me. It's always big for me. And yes, of course, deep diving into a lot of that summoning stuff was really interesting. And like I said, I really do honestly believe what Nanahoshi is summoning is stuff from our world. So she's hitting on it, like almost like it's almost like she's adjusting the summoning circle, and it's like just panning around to this parallel world, and suddenly, oh, there's Earth right there. Beam it up, Scotty, and then boom, there's a leg. And it's like, okay, we're getting there. We're about the location. Hopefully, like, suddenly, randomly, like, an eyeball of a human just doesn't, like, pop out of... Because I get to see somebody walking along this, like, sidewalk, and there's this little grasshopper. It's bouncing around, and then suddenly the grasshopper just plops over because one of its legs disappears. And I'm like, what? That's weird. And then they start walking some more, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, their eye just disappears out of their sockets. This is I swear what she's doing is dangerous. Like, Nanahoshi, what she's doing is absolutely dangerous and terrifying. And again, it goes back to the whole thing where, like, what is she going to do when suddenly, I don't know, like an 11-year-old just suddenly pops out of nowhere and starts crying, "Where's my mommy?" What are you going to do? Like, you're going to quickly go, okay, all I got to do is just flip the summoning circle, and then, okay, you're sent back. Bye, Rudius. Jumps on the circle. I don't know. She obviously knows what she's doing. So hopefully, I really am at this point, especially with this chapter, I really want to get a perspective of Nanahoshi. Gosh, what I would love an inner thoughts and perspective of Nanahoshi. And granted, that's what I get with every single character that's introduced. I want to dig into their minds. I don't want a third person perspective. I want to get into their minds. Thankfully, at least with Sylphiette, they got quickly into her. The moment that she reappeared, we got Sylphiette chapters, and it started diving into her mind. Now, it was a lot of stuff that was really confusing, but it made me really kind of understand her very quickly. Whereas again, like Nanahoshi right now, I don't fully understand her. I know what she's saying, but I don't know what she's thinking. Again, like I said earlier with Ellen Elise, I want to know what she's thinking right now. Is she thinking, gosh, this Cliff guy melted my heart, he's actually going to help me? Or is it going to get twisted where we get an Ellen Elise chapter and she's literally like, this dumb kid, he's so cute, he thinks he's going to rescue me, I'm playing along with it, and if he cures my cures, I'm so going after Soldat. As soon as he fixes my curse, I'm gonna go marry Soldat. That would be the greatest twist. But again, what I mentioned earlier, I want to hear what Ellen Elise is thinking about with Paul. Like, why does she hate Paul so much? That's just like one of those lingering question marks that we still haven't answered. Shoot, yes, we even got Cliff's perspective. I think so far what we've gotten Paul, Zenith, Lilia, Aisha. I think we got Ghislaine. Yeah, I think we got Ghislaine. Cliff, Edis, Roxy. Sort of got a Kishirika, Pedigus, and Orsted during the whole displacement incident. And then, of course, we got Sarah. So we've gotten a lot of other perspectives with inner thoughts, which, again, that's what I want. I don't want third-person perspectives. I just want inner thoughts. And that's where all the juicy stuff is. So anyways, that is chapter 7 and 8 of Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Volume 9. Again, I apologize for... I honestly... I'll admit, I apologize. It does really feel like I didn't condense this chapter enough. But again, it's always so hard. There's some times where there's some context that I don't want to miss when I condense stuff. And so it's always like a pull and a push as to how much I want to condense. I don't want to condense too much because sometimes it leads up to a point that I kind of want to get into. So as per usual, my method for doing these Mushoku Mondays is constantly evolving. Sometimes I condense really well. Sometimes I fail to condense enough. Either way, I hope you guys enjoy the travel either way, even if you don't get the chapters you want in a Mushoku Monday. But yes, as per usual, I greatly appreciate your guys' support, and you'll just have to wait until next week before we get the big reveal, which at least you know that I know, so you guys don't have to worry about it in the chat anymore. I'll even probably put in the premiere that you guys can talk up to 10. I don't care. I'm done with hiding it. But yeah, I'm still looking forward to reading the Sylphiette 0 chapter, even though, like I said, I think it's going to be probably a lot of condensing. So that'll probably make it work out really well for next week. So hopefully that means next week will be the final Mushoku Monday for Volume 9. We can actually conclude Volume 9 and move on to 10, which already people are saying, can't wait for you to talk about Volume 9. Like, every time I'm getting, like, halfway through a volume, everybody's like, I can't wait for next volume. I can't wait for next volume. I can't wait for next volume. It just never ends. It's never going to end. All the way into the end. When I get to volume 19, they're going to, man, I can't wait till you get to volume 20. But anyways, as per usual, thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere, for supporting the channel, for hitting the like button. Make sure to hit that like button if you've forgotten already. Hit it. Hit it now. Additionally, leave a comment if the comments are open. I'm pretty sure now the comments will be open. So thankfully, for once, we'll probably have an open comment, unless the VODs tell me, no, that's not a good chat. You're missing something in here that people are going to start insinuating. There's something in here that's insinuated for later stuff, and so you need to close down the comments. But yes, as per usual, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you got my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, we have a Mushoku Mondays. I have a full playlist of all of the chapters and volumes. So if you want to go back and watch my journey up until now, I definitely welcome you to do that, and I greatly appreciate the supports, all the views, all the helps, all the likes, all the comments. As per usual, I greatly appreciate you guys' vocal support. It means so much to me to hear you guys say that you love the Mushoku Mondays. It brightens your Mondays, which is like the worst day of the week for most people. All that support, those good words means a lot to me. It definitely does touch my heart. It kind of leads to the end of every Mushoku Mondays, people saying thanks for this Mushoku Mondays and thank you so much. And it's like, it means a lot to me. I get emotional. I'm sorry. I'm a softie down deep inside. I'm like Rudius. I'm a tough guy if I need to be, but down deep, I'm emotional. As per usual, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to support more and you're able to, I would greatly appreciate if you consider supporting on Patreon, my tips link, and the super thanks button down below, as well as a membership button down there where you can become a member of the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel. I've always wanted to do this. Until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. That was dumb. Walking in with Ellen Alise. She's been Bah! Not like you have any news for it. Bah! Not like you have any need for it. I've known many men who sought fame. I've known many men who sought fame and strength to do an excessive, too proud by half that none. Rarer illnesses or venoms used a high illnesses or venoms used a high rank monster. The only divine tiered detoxification spell Rudius had heard of. The only divine tier
Julie asked about the drinks, and Bodygotti responded, "Bahaha, you're a dwarf. All right. Indeed. Bahaha, you're a dwarf, all right. Indeed, this is beer from the highest quality. Indeed, this is beer of the highest quality." Who summoned many fearsome fiends and who summoned many fearsome foes. The cursed spears were presumably magical implements. Chanting a specific intent. Luke speaks up again. What's the matter? Luke speaked up again. Luke, don't be ridiculous. Perhaps, what was my voice for him? Perhaps I'll have a mug as well. What was my voice for him? I forgot my voice for him. I'm the elder brother. Master, that's what it was. Master. Perhaps I'll have a mug as well.